What lessons we failed to learn in this or last century?
We all pass these tests badly. The war in Yugoslavia started. It was first big lesson for us. There is no way to impose, to the people coexistence. Time is so important for
Building bridges.
There is a lot of culture around the world and you don't see impact on that. For me, culture is exactly the day after.
What can Central European philosophy offer Ukraine today?
Ukraine is part of Central Europe. You are practitioners of ideas. You are doing more than you can. Peremocha is a kind of process.
Krzysztof, let me introduce you and say a few words. Krzysztof Czyżewski is a practitioner of ideas, writer, philosopher, culture animator, theater director, and editor. He is the co-founder and president of the Borderland Foundation, which turns 35 this year.
35.
35.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the director of the Center, Borderland of Arts, Cultures and Nations in Sejny, Poland, and together with his team in Krasnogruda on the Polish-Lithuanian border, Krzysztof renovated a house that once belonged to the family of Czesław Miłosz, the Polish poet, prose writer, translator, diplomat and lawyer, and established an International Center for Dialogue there. One important detail before our conversation, several of Krzysztof's books have been translated into Ukrainian and you can find them in online shops. And Krzysztof himself has translated dozens of books by Ukrainian authors into Polish. A small selection of them is on our table. I'm always happy to see you, but especially I'm happy to see you in Uzhhorod.
Thank you. Dużo dziękuję za приглашение.
So, my first question to you, you have come to Zakarpattia, a region where several borders, languages, identities and memories met. You spent a few days in Vynogradiv with the Small Centers of Europe project. This is of the world, sorry. And this is already your second time?
In Uzhhorod?
In Vynogradiv.
In Vynogradiv, second time.
Second
yes.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And for 2 years, the Dilemma Mobile Academy held in Uzhhorod as well. What do you feel when you find yourself in a place like this? Do you feel a sense of connection with this space and place?
Yes, of course. I feel at home, like of my borderland. Yes, I'm a borderlander. I'm a person who devoted life to build bridges between different cultures and difficult neighborhoods. And being here in Zakarpathia, in Uzhhorod, in Vynogradiv and many other places, I feel the same heritage, the same richness, the same potential of doing crazy new things for the future, the same dark background also because of some tragedies in the past, which still needs openness or, care. But of course, being here, for me, it's also being in Ukraine. And this is a different thing. And I think nobody of us here would expect that at the beginning of 21st century, we will experience such terrible war. And so this is another layer for me to be here and to be with you. When I receive an invitation from you, from here. I reject all others' invitations because it's a priority for me, for my people in my team in the borderland, to go to Ukraine and to be with you here in any way we can, yes, and help and do things together and struggle together and assist you with any possible help we can contribute.
You have built your work and the work of Pogranicia around Sejny. So it's a small town in Polish-Lithuanian border. How can a small place become a center of big ideas? What does a province offer that capital cannot, on your opinion?
It was rich before we came there, but not discovered. And I think it's very much the case of such places, that whenever you go on the borderlands, when you start to live there and dig up, you will find treasures, very often forbidden, forgotten, rejected, because of different reasons. One reason is that people left, went to the bigger world or were expelled by history, by some tragic events, but also because they don't belong to the mainstream of our new countries. But this is something what fascinates me, to discover new things, that's the way how I understand province, because sometimes when we hear province, we feel that it is some pejorative, the negative attitude to that. Oh, you are from the province, everybody would like to be in the center, and so on. For me, there is a difference between being provincial, which is one thing, and being in the province, which is another thing. Provincial, I found many people very provincial in big cities, in big centers. In Warsaw, for example, for me, Warsaw always was very big provincial community. Why? Because they need a scapegoat. They need provinces to be big.
Capital.
The capital, yes. So you see these people in a very big center looking around and saying, oh, this is a province, that's something provincial, that you have a scapegoat, you need somebody smaller and feel better and bigger, But province is in contrary. The province is like a space, open new space for pioneers, for new discoveries, for doing crazy things which are far from being standard and status quo. I think we never would succeed to establish Borderland Centre in Warsaw or other big cities. The province offers you the possibility of doing very creative, new, original things. And that's our case also with this small town, Sejny. We didn't, of course, thought from the beginning that it would be a small center of the world. It came much later. But from the very beginning, it was so many things to discover, so many things to which were challenging us. We came there like greenhorns, knowing nothing about the borderland, and so learning a lot, hearing, listening to the people, and establishing a kind of dialogue with them from the very beginning. And then only you have your workshop. We are artists, educators, theater people, poets, musicians, and so on. So our role was rather to transform this voice of the place and of the community of the people into art form, into something what will be justful to the experience. Because sometimes people believe that when you go to the province to work, you should step down with your ambitions as an artist or intellectual. Yes, okay, it's fine to go to far, to small town, but you will compromise with your art level.
And ambitious.
Ambitious, yes, because it's small town. Why it is so? I think it's a problem with our democracy. If we start to believe like that, it means that we distrust to the people and that we may do these divisions from big power of the center of big numbers and so on. And then we have problem with democracy, of course. So one of our intuitions of 1989, of this momentum of transformation, was that, okay, if you want to build democracy in our country, we should decentralize it. That the decentralization was like a name for us, for the democracy. During communist time, our country was very centralized. So that was this gesture for democracy. Let's go out. Yes, let's decentralize this body, and that's how it happens that we ended up in Sejny.
It sounds like a real freedom.
Mm-hmm, right. Right.
So you describe yourself and your colleagues as well as a practitioner of ideas, not just a theorist. What does it mean for you, first of all? And when does a theory become action? And how do you know then the right moment has come?
I will start with your last question. This momentum of time. Yes, it was really the moment of 1989 when we started to think about doing new things. My background and my friend's background was alternative avant-garde theater, mostly in Poland. And I was also engaged in underground opposition movement. I published a dissident newspaper in Poznań when I was at that time in the 80s, underground. So, but everything, as I'm saying, was underground, was in alternative, on the margins of a public life. So the longing was among us to go up on the surface with our ideas, dreams, and ambitions, and start to do it together with people. So to leave an island, when circumstances were like that only possible freedom was in some, niches, islands of freedom. But so this momentum was, okay, we are now open. Yes, we should go on the surface. And the direction was towards the people, because my experience from the past was with something what was called counterculture. You remember that time of late 60s, 70s, our alternative avant-garde theaters were somehow a continuity of counterculture in the West. Yes, there is this kind of riot, uprising against official culture forms of activities in France, in United States, in the West. Differently, it was in our part of Europe, in Prague, because it was 68, and different kind of experience. But what was important lesson from that time to me and to my friends was that this need and desire to create something new with your dreams meant at that time that we should escape from the people. Yes, the direction was going out to commune, to far away, to the forest, to the desert, in California or somewhere else, and do your own paradise. Yes, to create a commune which will be free, with free love, with free expression, with free word and everything. And it ended up very badly. It ended up with small regimes, small states under the guru dominant, very, very often with violence and different kind of problems inside. So the beginning was beautiful, but at the end it was in contrary to the dreams from the beginning. So my lesson at that time was that maybe the answer to that is to change the direction, not escape from the people, but go toward them. Let's do it among the people. Let's do it with them. Let's test our ideas and dreams in real life, not in the artificial paradise somewhere outside. So I remember that moment because from one side we enjoyed freedom and we created, our foundation. It was an NGO, so suddenly you are independent. But when only we came to Sejny, we established a center which was a local government center supported by regional government. And our friends were saying, oh, what you are doing? You are losing your independence. Yeah, you will be never independent being, under local government. But that's exactly what we wanted. We didn't want it. Our intuition was that going to the people, to the community, doesn't mean that you should be independent, but maybe interdependent, maybe, not being like a body from outside only, and that's about the freedom. And our care at that time was more not as much as freedom, which was also surprising. We dreamed about freedom. The dream was to be independent, sovereign, but the case was that only we gain it. And before, you remember, we had in the 80s this slogan with Solidarity Move, there is no free, nie ma wolności bez solidarności. There is no freedom without solidarity. So we needed solidarity to gain freedom. But when only it happened, we lost solidarity. And till today, it is our problem. And I don't think it is only our problem. So you may see our culture work in this small town as something to prevent it, to be more focused on solidarity rather than freedom at that time. So to develop this concept of culture of solidarity, which was before small centers of the world, we were started to talk and think about how to practice culture of solidarity, which needs another kind of workshop, another skills, another ideas than defending your freedom of your expression and so on. As you are an artist, you care about freedom of your expression, but maybe you can be artist of the community. And then you care more about solidarity with people than your own expression. And maybe you more think about how to dig up this free expression from other people, who you are living from. This is another kind of art that I can help or gain a knowledge how to help people to be creative, yes, to engage in creative kind of work. So that are these small pebbles, and we started to gathering to create this new format of cultural center.
How to move from ideas and theory to real actions in your case? How it was?
It could work together with a physical move, yes, that you just pack your things and go.
But
yes, and of course you risk a lot. Yes, you are leaving your stable life behind you, and you go to nowhere. Yes, without any guarantee of how it will end up and so on. But this was something crucial, that we undertake. We called it the Journey to the East, our first program of our foundation. We had a horse, and we built a van for our scenography, and the second was a jeep together with another one for our children, for Veronica, who is sitting here, and they were with us. So we were going on the journey to the East, not knowing when and how we will end up. But the effort was to go just to a new province, to the people, and to find the way how we can practice all these ideas we have from the books. Yeah, because the idea of Borderland, it was something what we own to our writers and philosophers and from the books, among others from Czesław Miłosz. You're reading his Native Europe, Rodinna Europa. And that's my problem. When I read such kind of book, immediately I think how to practice it, what I can do with these ideas. Yes. So not to go to academy to study it, but to go to real life, to real circumstances of life, and try to practice it, to check it, what is possible, where is this borderland ethos and tradition, after all this time. Miłosz was writing, Vincent was writing about, Stępowski. By the way, many of them were writing, and their roots were in Ukraine. In fact, the most powerful essays by Jerzy Stępowski, from Giedroyć team of Paryska Kultura, Paris Kultura, they were about Ukraine. In fact, the same was about Husulian region of Stanisław Vincents, and so on. So you have this mythology of multicultural heritage of these regions, and from the books, you look around and you don't see it. You see a Soviet communist reality around you. So anybody can say it is just an idea belonging to the past. Nothing like that exists. That was what we were hearing very much. Don't be so idealistic. Everything is destroyed, erased, all the bridges broken. We are living in different circumstances. So there is any more borderland. Because you see, when I'm using this word borderland, pogranicze, I'm sure that it is a Ukrainian word, by the way. But it's very important how we will understand it. It's very much, our work is very much about the words and language. And very often it is mistakenly translated into English, pogranicze, as a borderline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like
so
a frontier.
Frontier, yes. So American and Mexican borderline, yes. So that's the way how in the West the border is understood as a strict border of division, of separation, and that's borderline, yeah. But borderland is land, kraj, yeah, land, zemla, different people, different cultures, different languages, different faith, like in Uzhhorod, yeah, living together. And this, it's completely another cosmos of when in English you hear the word multiculturalism. Yes, they understood it as archipelago of different islands, yeah, different cultures, diversity, yes. But the borderland is not only about different cultures. Borderland is very much about connective tissue between them.
And synergy as well.
And synergy, yes. And sometimes culture is not only like belonging to that group or another group, but for example, for Miłosz, culture was something beyond ethnic origins, languages, cultures, and so on. So there was this meta level of culture which unifies us in all Zakarpattia, in all, Grand Duchy of Lithuania, when Miłosz was feeling himself being a citizen, yes, of Grand Duchy. If you would ask him, Miłosz, who you are, what is your identity? He would say, I'm a citizen of Grand Duchy of Lithuania, yeah. So it was, this kind of mythology, kind of myth you find in the books. But now 1989 comes and we ask ourselves, okay, but let's check it in the practice. Yes, let's go to the borderland community. Then it happened to be Polish-Lithuanian at the end. And let's see how it works and if it is possible to reinvent or rebuild or reconnect to this tradition in a new circumstances. That's how we started to practice it.
We just read Stempowski books and essays on our book club with Andriy Lubka. So it's very close to us. Your work in Pogranicia built first of all on dialogue between people, cultures, and between memories as well. So today, when we have this full-scale invasion in Ukraine, what lessons we failed to learn in this or last century in building dialogue between nations and people and cultures?
We all passed these tests badly in current history of 19th, 20th century. You can see destruction of borderlands everywhere. And there were, of course, different reasons for that. One was, our need, and very often they were positive at the beginning. I remember the book by Brian Porter we published once, from which moment nationalism started to hate. You know this book. So because at the beginning nationalism, it was very much about emancipation, about of nation, yes, of freedom for language, for own culture, and so on.
Independency.
Yes, and independence. So very positive things, but it did some costs, yes, and we paid some price for that, because when you start to struggle for that, you more think about your neighbor as enemy, yes, as somebody who is different from you, or you start to search for any possible difference rather than things common with them. So you have this period of time when you build your independence, but you cut all the belongings to others, and then this communist ideology came, which were also very much against this tradition of living together and creating, common cultural fields. Everything what was connected to the past in the communism, as far as I remember, was negative. So we built just new world and don't remember or anything from the past, because it's danger, it's bad, it's dark, and here we are. Yes, I remember when only we established Borderland Foundation, the war in Yugoslavia started. It was first big lesson for us that it is not something about the past we are working with, but it's very much about preventing or struggling against such things today or in the future. Yes, that is. So that's one thing. Another is, of course, we are in Poland, lucky not to be so close to the vampire like Russia. Yes, And so you have on the other side a desire for rebuild empire for any costs, and to struggle with that is not very much about dialogue, and in that idealistic way. Sometimes the answer or the part of the dialogue or the part of building a bridge, I often try to talk about this with my Western partners and friends, is not to talk, is to be separated, yes, strictly. I remember when the war started in Kosovo, as a last stage of Yugoslav war, I was against pushing Serbs and Albanians living together. I was, as a borderlander, for division and for the independence of Kosovo and so on, because working there, and I spent a lot of time there, I was feeling that there is no way to impose, to the people coexistence. This thing is not possible to impose. Yes, so first you should be divided, separated on your own. It's part of building dialogue, and then start from your position, from your independence, sovereignty, justful dialogue. The way how you build a bridge, because sometimes we imagine the bridge is just this beautiful arch, a tiny, masterpiece, between two shores, yes, two banks of the river. But in fact, when you start to build a bridge, you build a tower on one bank, a firm ground on the other bank. You do the same, and only after you do not end up, of course, of this work with a tower. But this is this magic moment when from the tower you find the way, to go across, yes, to leave something on your background and go to this space in between. But there is no bridge without the tower. There is no bridge without a firm bank of the river you can establish yourself. All other possibilities are just illusion, yeah, which is as dangerous as hatredness or divisions.
And it can be too early.
Yeah.
So we need the time to think about that.
Exactly. Time is so important for
building bridges.
For building bridges. You see, as you've mentioned, we are working 35 years in one place. Yeah, as continuous daily work, which I believe we lost in culture, in contemporary culture, this dimension of time. And that's why I raise very often this question, why we are so inefficient as culture people in the world. There is a lot of culture, around the world. Thousands, millions of festivals, a lot of money spending on that. And you don't see impact on that. We have more and more wars, wars, new wars, hatredness, and so on. And there is no relation between cultural work, cultural festivity, and real life. It's like more and more I see with what's going on now in Middle East and so on, or United States, and so on. That is, it's no link, between culture itself and the reality of life. Yeah. And one of the reasons, my answer to that is that we have a festival culture, that we have event-oriented culture. So we make a big festivity all around the world, yes? Like being blind what is around us, yes, very much. And what will happen the day after the festival ends? Yeah, that because for me culture is exactly the day after, So of course we need holiday. Yes, and during our stay in Vynogradiv, we were talking with leaders of small centers of the world from different parts of Ukraine, how to reinvent holiday in these small communities, not a festival. And holiday means święto, yes, that you work all the year with your community, with cultivation of the land, of crafts, of education, many things. And the outcome of that is a święto, yes, a holiday. The difference today is that we can buy it. You have money, you invite artists, and you have festival and so-called holiday. But this is not the same. The connection between work, effort, and holiday is broken. Yes, and it affects, of course, in my mind, the way we live. Yes, so that's why culture is not so with a strong impact to our life. Yes, that it is something more and more from different world, to us. So our answer to that would be, this kind of organic work, which I think in Ukraine sounds familiar. Yes, this praca organiczna, tak, that's which somehow we should regain to our communities. Yes, as a main focus of cultural work we need.
Krzysztof, you are a close friend of Timothy Snyder and Marcy Shore, and it was actually through my meeting with them at your Dilemma School in Sejny that Timothy Snyder's visit to Uzhhorod became possible. So it's your fault. And Professor Snyder held a seminar on understanding totalitarianism in the postmodern world and the lessons of Central European philosophy. So my question is, what can Central European philosophy offer Ukraine today, and what can Ukraine offer to it?
Mm-hmm. First of all, I believe that Ukraine is part of Central Europe, which for me is obvious, but not for everybody. And I remember for many years, we organized something what we called Central European Culture Forum in Sejny. And once Petro, who was ambassador of Ukraine in Poland, Dmytro Pawłyczko was with us. And when we were saying, because we were using this phrase, Central Eastern Europe, you remember there was a time to embrace Ukraine against Kundera concepts that it is only Habsburg
Until
Europe.
now too.
Yes, that we want to embrace the whole Ukraine, also to Central Europe. So Dmytro Pawłyczko was saying always, don't say Central Eastern Europe, say Central Europe, and we, Ukraine, we are part of Central Europe. And because now, if we can think about Central Europe as a relevant region, it is only with Ukraine. Without Ukraine, Central Europe doesn't mean anything today. And this struggle you are conveying in Ukraine is a very relevant voice from this part of the world to the world. And what we can contribute from this side is, of course, many things, but I like the word peremocha, which I learned in Ukraine, not as a word only, as the whole meaning of that. And you are practicing it. You are practitioners of ideas. We can say a lot about peremocha, but if you not practice it, doesn't mean anything. And peremocha, peremochty, mochty more than you can. This is a new lesson for the world. I was all my life, I was experiencing situations when people were stuck because the powers were saying we can't do more, or it is impossible. We should compromise. We should give up. That's how the world works. Yes, that was a lesson. In Yugoslavia, for example, imagine I never heard being so many times in Yugoslavia, I never heard the word victory in this war. Nobody was feeling victorious after all things happened there. Yeah, so everything was like a rotten compromises, which didn't solve anything, in fact. And still, many of the countries in former Yugoslavia, they're stuck in kind of crisis, and the war is very close. All the time, people feel that there could be a new conflict and so on. But what happened here is that you are doing more than you can. And you are doing, so we remember from the beginning of the war that, the West knew scenarios for Ukraine. Yes, the president will escape few days, it will take for, all these interventions, so-called, and that's how it works. And suddenly we see completely different position of Ukrainian society and everything, which is that's why I'm thinking very much about and promoting it, that we should learn the word peremocha in original in each of our languages, that we shouldn't translate it to victory, for example, which is so different word, victory. So it's like one thing happens, we celebrate victory, fireworks, but never works like that. Peremocha is a kind of process, yes, of the way you are heading for gaining victory and so on. So I believe that we should use this in English, in Polish, as we use human rights, for example, yes, that we don't translate it very often, that it is a universal word which is saying something very important about our contemporary world. I know, of course, I can imagine the price you are paying and Ukraine is paying for that, but I understand that it happens because there is no other way for you to obey, to give up and so on, and that's something what comes from this part of the world today, and showing that this scenario is imperial powers, doesn't work anymore. So there is no yes for that. Yeah, that is no, like a Tim Snyder would say, is this belief of eternity. Yeah, you remember from his books that we believe that always it was like that, and always it will be like that. Yeah. So this, and he took it from Russia, say, but it works now in United States also, surprisingly, and he knew it. So Tim by himself is the example of a person who learned and did all the research from the beginning here in this part of the world, but now, thanks to that, he can not only understand what's going on in the West, but he can be very active in struggling with Trump government, with what's going on in America, and so on and so on. All this is his background, from this part of the world. So he himself is like a person who can translate, our experience to the contemporary world. That I remember, that years ago he was saying, using this name, words like fascism, which, in the West people, oh, you are exaggerate, we are living in liberal democracies and so on. But he was saying, no, it is fascism, it is regime, it is tyranny. It's going to no freedom. And you have this antenna to feel it much in advance than other people do. So today, many people will agree with him, and they are using these terms now in all media and possible. But we should remember that he was talking about that, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Yeah.
It was a foresight from Ukrainian
Exactly.
perspective, like
Exactly.
prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now we are in Uzhhorod, a city that within a single century was a part of 5 different states. And what do you see in this city when you arrive here as a researcher of Borderlands? 2 international dilemma schools were organized by you here, and now for 2 years in Vynogradiv you have a program. So what do you see here as a researcher of Borderlands? What can be interesting for us,
yes,
and helpful?
Yes, so let's talk, for example, about this idea of small centers of the world, because from the very beginning I was feeling that you not only understand it, but you know it, and my book is only helping you with the ideas from your experience and from your tradition here. So for both of us, for all of us, the question is how to put it into the practice in these new circumstances. And this is in my mind so relevant today because it could be the answer to that big powers ruling our world more and more in terms of oligarchy, of new regimes, of censorship and domination of the big towards the small. Yes, and we are in fact living in the world which believes only in using this biblical language, Goliath. Yes, if you want to be strong or efficient or having impact in the world, you should become big in terms of richness, of numbers, of scale, and everything. What means our gathering? 50 people? Doesn't matter. Doesn't have an effect, no interest in media. Sorry for Varosh is special, but usually you see how it works, yes? That if it would be a few thousand, big festival, so that's something, yeah? If we start to believe like that, we are lost. There is no way out from Goliath. It has us. Because the main instrument he or this power has is to break our trust in small. Because if it happened, we belonged to him, to this power. So we lost a David power in the world. Or the David power who only can fight with Goliath efficiently. And the only power who can change the world is a David power of small. Because of many reasons. One of them is something what I experience in Transcarpathia these days. We were heading to the small village Novoselica.
Novoselica, yeah.
And there is one of the most beautiful churches, Cerkov, I saw, Uspieńskaja, a very small one. I think the smallest in Transcarpathia. And why I'm saying about that sometimes to defend spiritual power, spiritual energy or impact, you can do it only in a small scale. You become more deep, more intimate, more truthful to your conscience. When only you go to the big sphere, big numbers, big bodies, and so on, something happening with your spiritual power. And And we need it. We need it for culture, for change, for be stronger. We need spiritual power. So the small can help to secure it, to develop it truthfully. And another thing is that being in here, I feel at the center, knowing and discovering the heritage, the people. I understand something what I know from my borderlands, that we can do here the most important thing in the world, most beautiful, most ambitious and powerful. Not heading, elsewhere. That there is here everything what we need to create this together. And so this is very much about small center of the world, that you don't think about doing such beautiful, important, ambitious things somewhere else. You don't feel provincial in that way, that you find the way to find all the potential, all energies, or genius lordship, but genius of the people here. And this, of course, it's kind of trust also, yes, and to build with your communities. But at the same time, and there is a third dimension of small center of the world, is that it is about the word. Yes, because the dangerous thing with small is the way, and with province, that, okay, we have our small paradise here, and we don't care about the rest of the world. We are the best. We have the most comfort, and we focus on our particular interest and life here, because we are small. And if it would happen like that, it would be very dangerous for small center of the world. It doesn't work like that. So only when you feel kind of responsibility for others, that's why we are here in Ukraine. Yes, that we feel our word is also here. Your war is our war. In that way, that we only can function as a center of the world, small center of the world, being in dialogue, in communication, in cooperation with other small centers of the world. Yeah, how big center works, the logic of big center is to monopolize, to be only one, to desert around everything and take it, to the big center. That's the logic of big center. The logic of small center is in contrary. We are happy that you are successful here. Yes, that it gives us strength, that you reach some good things elsewhere. And we don't want to make you part of us in terms of big center. We are happy that you remain yourself. Yes. So this is the way to develop solidarity, cooperation, everything. In that case, that our power is to have as many as possible small centers of the world. Yes, this polyphony of small centers, which becomes powerful if it happens. So we even would say that here, this time in Zakarpattia, the movement of small centers of the world was born. A few days ago, we initiated that as movement, inviting and having partners here in Ukraine, offering them fellowships, different possibilities of cooperation and work. And I feel the same in Lithuania, in the Balkans, more and more. It's the story about my book, how it works, that I have voices from other countries like Lithuania, that the people gathering in different locations, reading it loudly together, the chapters of these books, and things what they can do around themselves. Yes. So more and more I see it as a movement, as something what is answering some longing of the people, some needs we share together. And I can say that that if it will be the movement, it started here in Zakarpattia.
So I think we have some plans for our book club. Nice idea. As the Institute for Central European Strategy, we often speak about national minorities as a strength, not as a weakness, about diversity as a force that builds Ukraine. At the same time, Russia very skillfully uses the question of national minorities as a tool and turns into targets for attack. How, under these conditions, can we preserve this polyphony without letting it become a weapon?
Of course, it could be the weapon for our enemy, and Russia is especially the same. Of course, in different scale, in different circumstances, but when only Lithuania announced independence, they were using Polish minority as a fifth column, you know, and being against independence of Lithuania and of course defending their rights. And so it's a very typical of this kind of regime. One answer we can have to it is doing our own job and work, and not for Russia, but for us, you know, to do everything to establish a coexistence among them, because not only think about these negative terms that we should do it against Russia, yes, but if Russia would not exist, we should do the same. I think it's our future, you know, to have a good neighborhood with all surroundings. I like in Polish we have this word mościć, mostity, which means I think in Ukraine it's the same, to make a comfortable, safe place of living, yes? But why it is connected to the bridge, to the most, mościć. At the core of this word is a bridge. You may understand that enemies can use the bridge to destroy you. Yes, there is always danger with the bridge. But on the other hand, if you don't establish bridges with your neighborhood, with your environments, you will never be saved. Yes? That is a way for good living. Yes, that you just integrate, tame all the surroundings with all other people. Yes, living around you. And of course, the question also is how you will do it, what the model of this multicultural environment would be. One model could be assimilation, yes, and saying, okay, you can be part of my home, but you should accept all my rules, yeah, and which never work for long in a good way, yes, because there is a kind of resentment which will prevail sooner or later. So I know this tradition of hospitality from my family. You know, I remember my grandma who always saying me that if you are giving something, never keep even a little bit in your refrigerator. Yeah. So when you give, you give. Yeah. So you don't think about any kind of losing something, because that's how the gift is not working. And I will give you an example of Polish-Ukrainian relationships in recent time. When the full-scale war started in 22, as you know, we were very hospitable for Ukrainian neighbors. And we did a lot, and without, I would say, government, it was all on the burdens of civic society. We didn't create the refugee camps in Poland for for Ukrainians coming. There were, among the people, small governments and so on. And nobody was asking at that time what we will have out from that.
What satisfaction?
It was just about hospitality, about you are human, you just do it.
And solidarity as well.
So, yeah. And then 1 year passed, second year passed, and politician came to the game. And at the beginning, sometimes with a positive intentions, okay, let's show to the people what impact to our budget comes from the Ukrainian refugees. Yes, to convince people that they should continue to be hospitable, just to give them some rational arguments. Yeah, and when you start to do it, even with good intentions from the beginning, at the end, the solidarity is over. Yeah, people started to count. You have different logic in, or what they have from that, what I do have from that. That's so. And at the end, it's a chaos. Yes, at the end, it's not creating any order. Nobody is beneficial for them. It is especially, of course, on the Ukrainian side, but also on Polish side. It is destructive. Yes, and we feel a kind of weakness. Yes, and many things like that. So you would say that this full, truthful hospitality is idealistic. That's how many people would say from political spectrum mostly. But in fact, they are not realistic. Yes, they are not pragmatic, because they are saying, don't be idealistic with hospitality. Let's talk about concrete things, about the data, about money, about the budget, and so on. And that would be pragmatic. But at the end, they are not pragmatic. They are not solving anything. They are deepening chaos and not good way of life. So, but that's what happens with us, that we don't believe that these spiritual values, they are not idealistic, in fact. They are in deep sense very pragmatic, on long term or different dimension and so on. That's why I'm saying that we should really care about our spiritual dimension of our life, especially in such dark times with so many conflicts. If we will lose it, that or another way, we are much more astray, like lost in the darkness.
So now we know how to destroy bridges between people,
right?
In this case.
Right.
Where do you think the small centers of the world in Ukraine are today? And who is building these bridges? And where?
So many fascinating stories. There's, for example, Yula from capital Lvivka, near Kharkiv. She's a librarian, and her library happened to be like a shelter for people. So there is a struggle about the books, but also there are people hiding there, and they are very close to the front line. There is a story of Vakulenko, who dig up his diary in the orchard at Victoria Melina, who discover it there. And you have a woman who is still struggling to keep this library and to not escape from that place. She is still living there. She is still caring about, education, offering books, not only to children, but also to soldiers, and so on. Crazy story. You would say, why the struggle for the books during the war circumstances? There are much more important things. But I remember yesterday she showed me, the graffiti on the wall she created with children. When you have this picture when there is an orchard, yes, but on the roots, like seeds of these trees, are books. children were drawing, that way. So suddenly you have an amazing story about a librarian, yes. And for her, this librarian, for the whole community, happens to be a small center of the world, yes. Sometimes there are cases like from New York, Timothy and his friend. So they are disciples of Victoria Amelina festival she launched in New York, in Donetsk. So now it is under the occupation, but they do not lost the connection between them. They still keep together as community. They have this competition about essays among young people. They have this summer camps, schools, so on. And they still want to continue cooperation and working together with especially young generation and so on. So you may say it's a kind of a virtual small center of the world. And the same as we have a person from Avdiivka. Yes, and they keep, this village, still not only in the heart, but with the permanent meetings, cooperation, talks, and so on. So you have cases like that, but of course there are people doing, being teacher, journal, editors. It can be based on different things. It could be based on a theater, like Oesia is doing in Vynogradiv. Yes, it can be based on school, on ecology. It's not a strict rule, that it should be this field or another. But the main thing is that they understand that this kind of activities they are doing, it's like a community building, strengthening this community, and establishing a kind of continuity. Yes, that was because they could receive sometimes support for projects they are doing, but what is different now when they are part of small centers of the world movement is that they can have support for daily activity, for long period of time, and they give them this kind of freedom that they can create all this activity in long-term perspective.
If you imagine Ukraine in 20 years, it's not an easy, but we will try. What role will the idea of Borderland can play?
Oh, that will be the borderland, Ukraine, I believe. So we will have the potential of, which is now under this destruction process. But my belief is that losing something, what is dear and organic for you, may give you power for the future, for reinventing, rebuilding it in much stronger scale. You see, about our work with bridges, is not like we build something from the scratch, from zero. We always rebuild the bridge. Our work from the very beginning was about rebuilding bridges, in fact, because everywhere something was destroyed, disconnected, because of different circumstances. But this mosaic, I sometimes see it like a once existed mosaic. Yes, so the whole picture together, built with thousands of small pictures and elements, and suddenly it is destroyed. Yes, that's what happens to our civilization, that the picture of the common is destroyed. And now we are living on different islands. We know about few pieces of the mosaic, yes, and we sometimes pretend that it is whole. But when we start to explore, we discover that it is only a part of something. So this kind of, and I imagine a new reborn Ukraine after the war. It is like a collecting many pieces together for unifying something what was destroyed. And always I believe that this kind of work is giving amazing potential, for being innovative, creative, powerful, and so on. So I'm sure that's a future for Ukraine. The potential of Borderland, which is not so working very much, in the West anymore. Yeah, there are no military wars, often like in Ukraine, but there are many cultural wars which destroying the borderlands in the West. And even we, as a Borderland Center, we are called, more and more often to help or to be with our activities in the West. That this problem of multiculturalism is in deep crisis. Yes, in fact. And there is no good answer to that. In fact, I would say even that the polarization is stronger and stronger. And who knows, would you think 10 years ago what happens in the United States? The whole system of the borderland is broken. Yeah. There's a lot of racism, of hatredness towards immigrants, others, and so on and so on.
Xenophobia.
Yes, and so you have it. You have it in the West in a deep sense. So our answer, our challenge is how to change it. How to face it. In fact, and. Your struggle here is, I see it as a very, very concrete and strong way to understand it, because that's something what there is no excuse or escape from that for you. That is this kind of must, yes, of survival, yes, that Ukraine, this is a must for Ukraine to survival as a borderland. Yes, I don't see any other scenarios. Yes, and I don't hear loudly any other scenarios. Yes, so either Ukraine will be Ukraine, or there will be no Ukraine. Yes, and when I talk with Ukrainians, of course there are different points of view and different attitudes even to the war, but at least you have a very strong, very powerful civic society which understands what the future of Ukraine would be. Yes. Which is not typical, I would say, in other parts of the world. You see, it's when I was, for example, talking with Victoria Amelina about, she came to Krasnogruda to our centers, and we were talking about how she can develop the program starting from the festival, but just as an initiative for the whole community development in future. And she was using this term I like very much, the occupation of the future. That it is not only occupation of territory for herself, but it was very much about the occupation of future. So opening the horizon for the future for the people. And I think it's crucial for Borderland. Yes, if the future is taken out of you, you tend to do all the atrocities inside and the past will prevail. The darkness, traumas of the past will prevail. But if you have the prospect of the future, like working in United States, in New York, cities like New York, sometimes it happened I was working with students in New School, for example, in New York, about this district, Lower East Side, which is part of Central Europe, in fact, in New York. The question for me was for many, why in America and United States in 20th century didn't happen what in Europe happened. They had fascism, they had nationalism, they had hatredness among the people as we in Europe had. But never Second World War or any kind of this happened in the United States. And one of the answers we gained of this research was that they did have future. That what was typical for such multicultural society as American one was that each next generation would have better lives than the previous one. Yes, and this belief that we should invest in future was so strong that all this kind of ideological hatredness, ideologies and so on, finally could be put out of the scenario of that. Now, in the United States, you have first generation who has worse than the previous one. And you have Trump, and you have these new processes. I don't see that they have future in America. There's a big problem for them, where we are heading. They have a really big problem with that. And then you see how the whole structure of multicultural society is collapsing there. But in Ukraine, I see a different tendency, yes, that you have a struggle, you have a fight for peremocha, you are Ukraine, and in these 20 years, that could be something what can make you as a borderland very strong one, because of the occupation of future. I don't say that you have it for granted. You should work for that. I think what Victoria said, that we should, working on as the occupation of the territory, as for the occupation of the future, is still, of course, the work to do. Yes, should be done. But at least, here is so powerful, so visible, because it is a must. Because there is no other way.
And it sounds like a hard work. We need to demine our past and work on the occupation of our future. It's not an easy way. Krzysztof, we have a few books here. First, I saw these books in Krasnogruda, and I was very proud because you translated into Polish dozens of Ukrainian writers and poets. Could we read together something right now?
Sure, with big pleasure. These books are part of so-called Library of Ukrainian Poetry. We started to publish it facing the war, published when only the full-scale war started. And now we have more than 50 bilingual Ukrainian-Polish volumes of poetry, and we still continue to publish new ones.
Thank you for this. So could you choose the poem, one or more?
I have here Jarina Czarnohus, who also was at the residency in our center, translated by Bogdan Zadura, the master of translation from Ukrainian poetry. Після життя. Краще вдавати, що ти забула про втрачених у бою. Після життя надто схоже на крапку в кінці речення. Ту саму крапку, в яку один із древніх богів, як кажуть, умів сховати цілу цивілізацію із землею, небом та повітрям. Люди тут, бійці, одної миті втрачають життя, ніби листки, що опадають з дерев чергової осені. мабуть, тому осіннє листя здається нам таким прекрасним. Це опале життя нашої обороні присутності. Я так і не придумав, що робити з миттями, прожитими разом із тими, що втратили життя у бою. Я змогла їх лише провести.
Дякую. Thank you, dear Krzysztof, for this conversation, for our partnership, and for your everyday practice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.